Could you say like what your study, how you studied as a high school student and how that served you, and how did that have to change at
Mhm.
UCLA?
When I was in high school, I had a part-time job. So after school, I would go and tutor the local elementary school students. And I know that for when it came to studying, there wasn't as much to do because it was mainly completing assignments, and that took more of like just being responsible and getting the work done. And for me, it was easy to come home and just get that done and go back to school, pay attention, and it was a routine that I was able to. I didn't struggle much to get used to it because I found that paying attention in class was sufficient to do well academically and get good grades. And I thought that I could carry that same idea in my undergraduate years, but it's completely different just showing up to class and thinking that you're going to absorb it all, like just sitting there. And so I'm thankful for the responsibility, those skills of just knowing, like, okay, I have to complete that homework. Like, that did help me. But I think that thinking that you can just show up and still get an A is very unrealistic. Um, and for example, in my English classes, I would show up and for the English classes at UCLA, I would show up, pay attention, read the books, write my essays, and those are the classes where I did well. Those were my first A's in college. But I realized that there's different skills that are needed to be built in the science classes, which now when I say it, it seems a bit obvious, but at the time, they definitely weren't. Like, you have to prepare before you show up, especially if it's something that you have no idea, no background about that subject. And then more importantly, you have to review it right away and see and ask for help right away. Don't wait till the last minute. And I think that just those little steps, not taking them early on, really overwhelmed me because I thought, like, what am I doing wrong? Like, I'm showing up, I'm trying to do the homework, and I still don't get it. But there's more individual work to be done before you even show up to class.
So I have two questions. So if you were to go back and either give yourself advice or somebody who you knew, who you cared about, who was entering as a freshman, like what advice would you give them?
Yeah, I did reflect upon this, and one thing that stuck in my head was just being open to change. Because when I started college, I had this whole idea stuck in my head that you had to go in and you had to take this class at this certain time, and by the time you graduated, you were going to apply to medical school. And life taught me that things don't always go according to plan, and also we're all different people, and we all have to go through different journeys to become our best self. And I had a lot of trouble letting go of my plan, my supposed plan of applying to medical school right away. And I wish that someone had told me, like, take a moment to stop and ask yourself, like, well, how are you doing? Is your plan really working right now? Like, find a balance in what you're doing. Maybe don't take all the science classes right now. If I realized, like, oh, I did well in my other classes, maybe I should have taken more of that and then taken one science class at a time to build the skills that were needed, and reflect and see, like, am I really happy? Am I balanced right now? Or what could I do to find that inner peace and to ultimately like be my best self, not just academically, but like, also taking care of your mental health.
But thank you for taking your time. Is there anything else that you wanted to impart before we go our separate ways?
Well, I guess to all of you listening, even if you're pre-med or not, I would say make the most out of your time as an undergrad and don't let your grades define you. And if you're struggling right now, that's okay, because this is not who you are, and this is only like a temporary moment in your life. And if you stop and just kind of think, okay, how can I be better? Who can be a part of my team? I'm lucky enough to say, like, I do have a team of support around me, and I encourage you all to find that dream team in your life, whether it's Professor Jeannie, your counselor, or even you all, like, as students. You know your struggles so much better than anyone else does. Like, find those people in your life who will cheer you on, and don't let other negative comments get to you, because you can do it. Like, trust me, you can rise up and move on from any mistake or so-called failure that you've had.
Annalie, you're wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Before you come to college, everyone in your world will tell you, oh yeah, and you got to go to office hours, whether it's your parents or your college, your high school, college counselor, and no one tells you what you're supposed to do. And it's just assumed that we all know what to do. And then students get here, and if they do take that advice and they go to office hours, they think, oh, well, I guess what I'm supposed to do is ask the professor to deliver more content. I'll come up with 20 questions of things that you explained in class, explain them again. And that can be helpful, but I'd say that's about the worst way you could spend office hours, because you've got a book, you've got videos of your class, you've got your teaching assistant, your discussion site, you've got all these things, you've got Khan Academy to learn content. But when you're in office hours, you control the agenda. It's one of the only times at college you're in charge. You talk about anything you want. And the instructors have all been on some career vocation path of being an undergrad and then deciding they want to do graduate school and then going to graduate school, then finding a job. And so you can ask them about that. Well, how did you navigate this path? How did you end up where you are? Or they've designed a class and you ask them, how do you design let's say a lecture? How do do you start with the take-home messages that you want to have and then an outline and then questions, or do you do other stuff? When you're writing an exam, what's the ideal exam question from your perspective? Or ask them, say, how would you study for this class if you were in it? Ask them, what do you think is the most common mistake students in your class make in approaching the material? All of these things, they'd be happy to tell you, and they have unique insights that you can get from them that you can't get anywhere else. So the reason I feel like people in office hours should be talking about a lot of these meta issues is not that they're necessarily more important than learning the content, but that this is the only place you can get a lot of those answers, and so they're high value. So doing that is useful. That's also more likely to lead to conversations that will help them to get to know you better, so that someday they may, give you advice on another class to take or a research project, or they may think of you when they have a research position opening. Someone who just keeps asking them questions, explain photosynthesis again, they're not going to pop into their head as someone who's thinking creatively or critically. So that would be my recommendation. I didn't go to a single office hours in all of my college years, and I'm an idiot. It was a total wasted opportunity. I didn't go because I was afraid. I think a lot of people go and they think, I need to have some really insightful, perceptive thing to ask. and I don't have that, so I'll look like a bump on a log. Or they think, I don't know, the professor's going to start asking me questions and it will reveal that I haven't studied enough or that I don't belong here. So there's a lot of fear that goes on that you will be embarrassed or humiliated. There's a lot of fear that you don't know the right thing to do. There's a lot of just social awkwardness that you think it'll be uncomfortable. And there aren't a lot of people dispelling those whatever preconceptions. So I get it. I was terrified. I really thought that they would just laugh at me and make me feel bad, and I would have learned, I think, the important lesson that most professors are interested in you doing well and want to help you and have some insights that could help you. But at the time, I didn't think of them as real people who have lives and families and interests and things that they like or don't like. So I might have discovered that if I had gone, but given my fear, I never did.
All right. And why might you need a letter of recommendation in college? Or
When you're coming towards the end of college and you start thinking about your next steps and what you want to do, for a lot of things, whether it's graduate school or maybe a job or something like that, you do need a recommendation letter. It's just how the world works. It's how school applications work and all that. And it is one of the things that you can't cram for. You cannot in 2 weeks figure out who it's going to be and develop a relationship. Relationships take time. That's why I think you have to develop these relationship strategies. You have to know when you are a first-year student or a second-year student or even a third-year student, you have to know that at some point that day is going to come and you need a recommendation letter. So now imagine yourself in that position, and what's going to make that day the easiest? Probably someone that you've had for a couple of classes, that you've spoken to 15 times, that knows a little bit about you, and it just becomes a natural part of the progression. But if you haven't done that, at the end, there's nothing you can do to make up that sort of relationship. You can ask someone, but a lot of people think, oh, I just have to find a class that I got an A in and ask them. Well, your transcript already says the grade that you got. So the only value that you're getting from this recommendation letter is if they can comment on other aspects of who you are that could be valuable in someone thinking about whether they should hire you or accept you to a program. So it might be, how did this person handle challenges, when they faced adversity? What did they do? How has this person grown or changed over the years? How does this person take what they're learning and apply it to new situations? How do they integrate things across their education? It takes a long time for someone to find out those things about you, but those are the things that are going to make your recommendation letter most useful later on. So as hard as it is, you have to know that that day is going to come, and that if that's when you first think about it, it's too late. So that, if nothing else, motivates you to go to office hours. And don't go thinking, oh, I'm going to develop a relationship. Just go and try and get some value. Try and have fun, get to know the person, and then it takes care of itself later.
Okay. What are mentors? Why are they useful? And who could be good mentors, and how do you find them?
A mentor is someone who is going to give you the guidance and advice that you don't always even know that you need. They'll know from their own experience what are strategies that help you find stuff you like, or that help you find a job that you like, or a research topic that you like. So there's someone that knows you well enough that they can take what they know of you and they can take their own expertise and they can meld them together so that they can give you something of particular value. And the way you get them is to have a long-ish term relationship. It doesn't have to be super long, but maybe if you've spoken to a professor in depth 5 or 6 or 7 times, but over the course of a few years, that might be enough. Then they are able to give you advice, and you can either ask them for advice or it might just come unsolicited. In many cases with students I've known for a long time. I might just mention it to them in case they're nervous. I might say, hey, at some point you're going to need a recommendation letter. Just know I'll be happy to do it. And I think I could write a good one. Not that you have to do it, but you'll let them know. And a mentor will do that. They're on your side. They're an ally who's hoping that they can get you some breaks that will be useful to you.
What are some things that students can do before, during, and after class to maximize learning?
Well, go to class is an important one. I didn't do a lot of that for the first few years. I would say before class, make sure that you're not hungry, make sure that you're not tired. If people don't tend to their physical needs, you want your brain to work well. When you're in class, you have to think of that as the most important hour of the day, because that is when you're getting the stuff that's going to transform how you think. Many people go to class and they think, I'm going to kind of shut my brain off, I'll write down what I have to write down, and later I'll learn it or think about it or whatever. And I think that if you switch things around so that that hour or hour and 15 minutes or 50 minutes, whatever, that time you're going to be most engaged, and you are going to listen to things and you're going to take detailed notes. There's huge amounts of evidence that say taking notes has great value at helping you learn stuff. Even if they've already posted them to the web, that's a disaster. But you can take notes on them, and you can not just write down what they write down, you can write down your perceptions of their body language, of their emotions. Are they excited about this? Do they seem not excited about something? Do all those things, being very perceptive and getting everything else out of your mind. After class, if you can take time on a regular basis and somehow revisit it. What I like to do is I would recopy my notes. Just because I was trying to write them as fast as possible, I would spend, and that was my first part of my study every day. I would get these little index cards, 5x7, and I would recopy the notes, trying to make them look pretty. I'd use colors and I'd organize them a little, and I would create something that I was proud of. But the process of doing that kind of put it back into my head so that later when it came time to study, I already had good notes. I had already focused in class and then revisited it, so I was much more effective later on. I would do all those things. You can't do that for all your classes, but do it for mine.
Do you have tips to help a student get motivated to study even when it seems daunting?